My fellow delegates, I have a singular honor, one that I appreciate very much, at this time to present one of the most respected members of the United States Senate, who was one of my colleagues, and if I might say, one of the boys of Sam Rayburn and myself when he was in the House, a man who has led the way in our effort to become the mightiest nation the world has ever known, chairman of the Democratic National Committee during the triumphal campaign of 1960, the distinguished United States Senator from Washington, the Honorable Henry M. Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I ask all of you here in this hall and throughout America to join now in this memorial tribute to a man we love, our late President, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. John Kennedy achieved much in a few short years, but above all, he gave a new luster to the presidency, a new vitality to our highest office, and an eagerness to move ahead to meet the future. He was a spirited man, and America is more vigorous today because he had a zest for life. He lived life to the full. He was a rational man, and America is a wiser country today because he helped us understand the need for restraint and for responsibility in the use of our great power. He was a compassionate man, and America and the world felt his deep concern for people, his commitment to the cause of justice, and we are better for it today. In John Kennedy's life, the pressures only made him stronger. He was like a great tree on the Massachusetts Common. The south wind warms it. The sunshine nourishes it. The northeast gale strengthens it. The winter cold toughens it. All weathers went to make John Kennedy. The quality he admired above all was courage, and he was a courageous, gallant man in a world that never has too many. But if he were here with us, he would be squirming in his seat. He didn't welcome this kind of talk. He wanted to be up and doing. He was a man in motion, quick, alert. He sought to get things started. He worked to get things done. When he undertook anything, he went at it full out. That was the way he was. That was indeed his style. And so in his service to the nation, he gave his all. He was good for us. And if he were here tonight, I think John Kennedy would quickly add that America was good for him. There was so much life in him, he needed a big country with big things to do. And now it is my privilege and honor to introduce the man who stood closer to him in times of crisis and in times of fun than anyone else, his brother, Robert Kennedy.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Just let it go for a little bit, Bobby. Just let it go for a little. Mr. Chairman. 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 Maybe Mr. Speaker, could you do it? Is somebody else standing down? Will you? Go ahead.
I know, right here.
This side.
Over here.
You want me to do it? Attorney General Kennedy. asked me to request the delegates to be seated so he can proceed. And I'm asking this at the request of the Attorney General himself.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Johnson, Senator Jackson, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I wish to speak just for a few moments. I first want to thank all of you as delegates to the Democratic National Convention and the supporters of the Democratic Party for all that you did for President John F. Kennedy. I want to express my appreciation to you for the effort that you made on his behalf at the convention 4 years ago, the efforts that you made on his behalf for his election in November of 1960, and perhaps most importantly, the encouragement and the strength that you gave him after he was elected President of the United States. I know that it was a source of the greatest strength to him to know that there were thousands of people all over the United States who were together with him, dedicated to certain principles and to certain ideals. No matter what talent an individual possesses, no matter what energy he might have, no matter how much integrity and honesty he might have, if he is by himself and particularly a political figure, he can accomplish very little. But if he's sustained, as President Kennedy was, by the Democratic Party all over the United States, dedicated to the same things that he was attempting to accomplish, you can accomplish a great deal. No one knew that really more than President John F. Kennedy. He used to take great pride in telling of the trip that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison made up the Hudson River in 1800 on a botanical expedition, searching for butterflies, that they ended up down in New York City and that they formed the Democratic Party. He took great pride in the fact that the Democratic Party was the oldest political party in the world. And he knew that this linkage of Madison and Jefferson with the leaders in New York combined the North and the South and combined the industrial areas of the country with the rural farms. But this combination was always dedicated to progress. All of our presidents have been dedicated to progress. With Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase, but when Thomas Jefferson also realized that the United States could not remain on the eastern seaboard and sent Lewis and Clark to the west coast, of Andrew Jackson, of Woodrow Wilson, of Franklin Roosevelt, who saved our citizens who were in great despair because of the financial crisis, of Harry Truman, who not only spoke but acted for freedom. So that when he became president, he not only had his own principles or his own ideas, but he had the strength of the Democratic Party. So that when he became president, he wanted to do something for the mentally ill and the mentally retarded, for those who were not covered by Social Security, for those who were not receiving an adequate minimum wage, for those who did not have adequate housing, for our elderly people who had difficulty paying their medical bills, for our fellow citizens who are not white, who had difficulty living in this society. To all this he dedicated himself, but he realized also that in order for us to make progress here at home, that we had to be strong overseas, that our military strength had to be strong. He said at one time, only when our arms are sufficient without doubt can we be certain without doubt, that they will never have to be employed. And so when we had the crisis with the Soviet Union and the Communist bloc in October of 1962, the Soviet Union withdrew their missiles and the bombers from Cuba. But even beyond that, his idea really was that this country should and this world really should be a better place when we turned it over to the next generation than when we inherited it from the last generation. And that's why with all of these other efforts that he made, that the test ban treaty, which was done with Averell Harriman, was so important to him. And that's why he made such an effort. And so was committed to the young people, not only of the United States, but the young people of the world. And in all of these efforts, you were there, all of you. And when there were difficulties, you sustained him. When there were periods of crisis, you stood beside him. When there were periods of happiness, you laughed with him. And when there were periods of sorrow, you comforted him. I realize that as an individual, that we can't just look back, that we must look forward. When I think of President Kennedy, I think of what Shakespeare said in Romeo and Juliet, when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he shall make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. But I realize as an individual, and really that as an individual, and even more importantly, for a political party and for the country, that we can't just look to the past, but we must look to the future. And so I join with you in realizing that if what has been started 4 years ago, that everyone here started 4 years ago, if that's to be sustained, if that's to be continued, the same effort and the same energy and the same dedication that was given to President John F. Kennedy must be given to President Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey. If we make that commitment, it will not only be for the benefit of the Democratic Party, but far more importantly, it will be for the benefit of this whole country. When we look at this film, we might think of President Kennedy once said that we have the capacity to make this the best generation in the history of mankind, or make it the last. If we do our duty, if we meet our responsibilities and our obligations, not just as Democrats, but as American citizens, in our local cities, in towns, and farms, in our states, and in the country as a whole, And this country is going to be the best generation in the history of mankind. And I think that if we dedicate ourselves, as he frequently did, to all of you when he spoke, when he quoted from Robert Frost and said we applied to himself, but that we could really apply to the Democratic Party and to all of us as individuals. That the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Mrs. Kennedy has asked that this film be dedicated to all of you and to all the others throughout the country who helped make John F. Kennedy President of the United States. My thanks.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a great and good president, the friend of all people of goodwill, a believer in the dignity and equality of all human beings, a fighter for justice, an apostle of peace, has been snatched from our midst by the bullet of an assassin.
The voice is that of Chief Justice Earl Warren.
Our nation is bereaved. The whole world is poor because of his loss. But we can all be better Americans because John Fitzgerald Kennedy has passed our way.
Ambassador Adlai Stevenson.
President Kennedy was so contemporary a man, so involved in our world, so immersed in our times, so responsive to its challenges, so intense a participant in the great events and the great decisions of our day, that he seemed the very symbol of the vitality and the exuberance that is the essence of life itself. He made us proud to be Americans. Now he's gone. Today we mourn him. Tomorrow and tomorrow we shall miss him. So we shall never know how different the world might have been had fate permitted this blazing talent to live and labor longer at man's unfinished agenda for peace and progress for all.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy assumed the office of President of the United States as his nation faced the great challenges of a new age. He pledged leadership, and in time, Americans would find in his words a voice, in his ideals a faith, and a direction in the goals he set for himself and his country. This film is dedicated to the goals, the faith, and the ideals of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, as they were expressed in his own words during his administration of barely 1,000 days.
I sometimes think we are too much impressed by the clamor of daily events. Newspaper headlines and the television screens give us a short view. They so flood us with the stop-press details of daily stories that we lose sight of one of the great movements of history. Yet it is the profound tendencies of history and not the passing excitements that will shape our future.
Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. But in a very real sense, it will not be one man going to the moon. It will be an entire nation, for all of us must work to put him there.
In 1,000 days, he articulated for the nation the challenges of the 1960s.
To fulfill the role we cannot avoid on the world scene, we must re-examine and revise our whole arsenal of tools. First, we must strengthen our military tools. We are moving into a period of uncertain risk and great commitments, in which both the military and diplomatic possibilities require a free world force so powerful as to make any aggression clearly futile. If we are to keep the peace, we need an invulnerable missile force powerful enough to deter any aggressor from even threatening an attack that he would know could not destroy enough of our own forces to prevent his own destruction. For as I said upon taking the oath of office, only when our arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain beyond doubt that they will never be employed. Historians report that in 1914, with most of the world already plunged in war, Prince Bülow, the former German chancellor, said to the then chancellor, Bethmann Hollweg, "How did it all happen?" And Bethmann Hollweg replied, if only one knew. If this planet is ever ravaged by nuclear war, if 300 million Americans, Russians, and Europeans are wiped out by a 60-minute nuclear exchange, if the survivors of that devastation can then endure the fire, poison, chaos, and catastrophe, I do not want one of those survivors
to ask another, how did it all happen? And to receive the incredible reply, if only one knew.
Pledged to turn swords into plowshares, John F. Kennedy launched the first step toward the control of arms, bringing hope to an age of danger.
Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident or miscalculation or by madness. The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
Our representatives have met at the summit and at the brink. They have met in Washington and in Moscow, in Geneva, and at the United Nations. But too often these meetings have produced only darkness, discord, or disillusion. Yesterday, a shaft of light cut into the darkness. Negotiations were concluded in Moscow on a treaty to ban all nuclear tests in the atmosphere, in outer space, and underwater. This treaty is not the millennium, but it is an important first step, a step towards peace, a step towards reason, a step away from war.
It is much easier to make the speeches than to make the judgments, the president had said. If you take the wrong course, and on occasion I have, the president bears the responsibility, quite rightly. So that finally it comes down that no matter how many advisors you have, frequently they are divided, and the president must finally choose. So it was whenever crisis threatened the well-being of his nation. So it was in the fall of 1962, when it was learned that in Cuba, 90 miles from the shores of the United States, the Soviet Union had begun building missile emplacements. In this crisis, both the nation and the man were tested for the will and the courage to defend freedom. The president ordered a military quarantine of Cuba and bluntly declared that the Russians must halt what he called this clandestine, reckless, and provocative threat to world peace. The line had been drawn. A challenge that invoked the specter of a nuclear confrontation had been issued. This was the burden that John Kennedy accepted. This was the crushing responsibility that was his. It was so in Berlin and Vietnam. It was so in the Congo and in the United States. And his concern would range from the state of the nation's economy to the inviolable rights of man.
Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south. It is not enough to pin the blame on others, to say this is the problem of one section of the country or another. A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
Of his 1,000 days as president, some of the most memorable moments occurred when he left the capital to tour his nation and the world. In Washington, he would say, we talked of the United States, its dangers and its opportunities in a somewhat removed way. But out here, one can sense the power, the strength, the resources of this nation. Here, too, he could feel the response to his administration, the respect, the admiration, the affection that Americans felt for him. Sure of his way, here was tangible proof to him that where he led, the nation would follow. With the nations of Latin America, he forged the Alliance for Progress, and he came to symbolize the dignity and liberty it promised to the people of this hemisphere.
I shall return to Washington and tell the people of my country that you and they are bound together in one of the great adventures of human experience
to make of our hemisphere a bright and shining light for all the world. And in the 1960s, I believe that we can demonstrate so that all the world will want to follow our example, that freedom and prosperity can move hand in hand. I express our thanks to you, and I can tell you that the people of my country, in good times and bad, are committed to the progress of your people and this hemisphere. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, one of the Kennedys does not need an interpreter, so I'd like to have my wife say just a word to you.
Estas cosas deberían estar al alcance de todos y no limitarse a unos pocos afortunados.
To the people of the city of Berlin, John F. Kennedy embodied the resolute determination of the United States to preserve the way of freedom.
Free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
In Paris, as in every city he visited, the people cheered him as they would his nation, for the two were indivisible. And to all the world, he carried the image of youth, strength, and vigor.
Chairman, Mr. Minister, Mr. Secretary of State, Ambassador Alphonse, Ambassador Gavin, Ambassador Bonet, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I do not think it altogether inappropriate to introduce myself to this audience. I am the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, and I've enjoyed it.
That which came to be known as the Kennedy style took many forms. Often it was a quip and a smile.
I spoke a year ago today to take the inaugural, and I'd like to paraphrase a couple of statements I made that day by saying that we observe tonight not a celebration of freedom, but a victory of party. For we are sworn to pay off the same party debt our forebears ran up nearly a year and 3 months ago. Our deficit will not be paid off in the next 100 days, nor will it be paid off in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor perhaps even in our lifetime on this planet, but let us begin. Remembering that generosity is not a sign of weakness, and that ambassadors are always subject to Senate confirmation. For if the Democratic Party cannot be helped by the many who are poor, It cannot be saved by the few who are rich. So let us begin. It might be said now that I have the best of both worlds, a Harvard education and a Yale degree. In 1952, when I was thinking about running for the United States Senate, I went to the then Senator Smathers and said, "George, what do you think?" He said, "Don't do it. Can't win. Bad year." In 1956, I was at the Democratic Convention, and I said I didn't know whether I'd run for vice president or not. So I said, "George, what do you think? This is it. They need a young man. It's your chance." So I ran and lost. And in 1960, I was wondering whether I ought to run in the West Virginia primary. Don't do it. That state you can't possibly carry. And actually, the only time I really got nervous about the whole matter at Los Angeles was just before the balloting. George came up and said, "I think it looks pretty good for you."
The White House, in 1,000 days and 1,000 nights under John Fitzgerald Kennedy, often became a center for cultural activity, and that was part of the Kennedy style. As he sought to achieve excellence in all that he undertook, so did he admire and encourage talent and genius.
The poet, the artist, the musician, continues the quiet work of centuries, building bridges of experience between peoples, reminding man of the universality of his feelings and desires and despairs, and reminding him that the forces that unite are deeper than those that divide.
From his incredibly broad range of interests, John F. Kennedy shaped the path of his administration. A passionate believer in the value of knowledge, he launched a broad program for improving the educational opportunities of young Americans. A witness to the tragedy of mental retardation, he spurred the drive for research into its causes. His conviction that individual Americans could carry abroad a new image of America produced the Peace Corps. Under John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the office of president was the vortex of action and decision. And from his goals and faith and ideals, there came a new standard for his nation, a new challenge for its people. All this in 1,000 days.
Ask every person if he's heard the story, and tell it strong and clear if he has not, that once there was a fleeting wisp of glory called Camelot.
30th day of January in 1961, John F. Kennedy told his countrymen, "Let us begin." Today, in this moment of new resolve, I would say to all my fellow Americans, let us continue.
As the filmed record of the 1,000 days of John Kennedy's presidency ends here in Convention Hall, we show you live the scene now at this moment at the Eternal Flame and the grave of President Kennedy in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington. Don Goddard is there. August 27th, 1964, and just minutes before another candidate for the presidency of the United States accepts anew the opportunity for public service. Here, in the quiet of this evening hour, we pause beside the plot of ground that holds all that is mortal of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Worlds away, it seems, from the hurly-burly of a great convention, like the one that called him to history only 4 short years ago. Since this torch was lighted, and who does not remember its lighting, more than 7 million Americans and men and women and children of all nations and races and creeds have come here to hallow this ground with their mourning. Many have knelt here and wept, and thousands have left gifts of flowers and personal talisman. If ever there was an American shrine, this is it, and one day, when the architects have finished, there will be a national monument here, but tonight, a simple grave marked by a tiny flame. Tonight, from this ground arise memories that are present even in the bright convention hall. For it was not long ago that he was there, saying, as Lyndon Johnson says tonight, "I accept." Let us pause for a moment of remembrance. That was the scene now tonight at the grave of the president in Washington, and this is the scene back in Convention Hall in Atlantic City.
Mr. Speaker, fellow delegates.
In just a moment, Governor Adlai Stevenson will speak and will pay a tribute to Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of President Franklin D. Roosevelt.